Just a disclaimer, this review is going to be on an Airsoft ACOG, but I'll try to do my best and give you the most accurate information as it applies to the real ACOG. In this video, we'll be exploring two different types of Airsoft ACOGs, comparing them to a real ACOG, and we'll be going through a brief history of the ACOG. We'll look at the build quality, aesthetics, trademarks, the reticle, clarity, zoom, bullet drop compensator, the weight and how to use the BDC, and also the binned-in aiming concept with a test at the end to see how it performs on a gas blowback. What makes the ACOG so special? For one, it's always on, always ready. It doesn't use batteries, but it uses a fiber optic to collect light in order to illuminate the reticle. Also, it uses tritium, so at night you can illuminate the reticle without outside light sources. Number two, it's very reliable as it's been tested in high temperature and low temperatures, and it doesn't fog due to its dry nitrogen filled housing. If you'd like to know more, this diagram on Trigicon's website explains to you in detail more about the ACOG. The ACOG is seen in many games, and the US military uses them on their standard issued gear. First up, we got the ACOG with the green crosshair. This ACOG has its trademarks lasered on. It's got the fiber optic on top of the sight, but it does not feature the tritium. Also, this sight doesn't have the wire to keep your lens caps in place, so if you're not careful when adjusting the sight, you may lose the caps. Unfortunately for this one, you can't remove it from the mount. It has screws and I tried to unscrew them, but they didn't budge. This sight also is missing the serial number on top of the body and the Made in USA marking on the side near the mount. Next up, we have this red chevron ACOG that is almost identical to the real thing. As with the green crosshair ACOG, it features a red fiber optic on top. It's got the lens caps with the wire keeping you from losing them, and it's got trademarks in every spot it's supposed to be. As you can see, Made in USA is there, and it's got the serial number on top. On the elevation knob, it shows you which direction is up, as well as on the windage knob, it tells you which direction is right. Here's how it looks mounted on the rifle. Build quality wise, I'd say they're both about equal, but definitely it can't stand up to the durability of a real ACOG, but it still is pretty solid. I feel like it can take the recoil of a gas blowback because the build quality is pretty decent. I'd say probably a 3 out of 5 if the real ACOG was a 5 out of 5. On the green crosshair model, it doesn't have the washers, whereas on the red chevron, it has the crush washer and regular washer to prevent over tightening. Taking a look at the two side by side, the bottom one is missing the Made in USA, and the top one has the model number as opposed to the bottom one having a QR code. The difference from the top is that the one on top has the serial number and has the wire keeping the screw caps in place, whereas the one on the bottom doesn't have either of them. Looking at the ACOG from the other side, the one on top has the trades embossed, whereas the one on the bottom has them lasered, and the one on the bottom is missing the ACOG 4x32 that the one on top has. I would say that both of them do a good job with the fiber optic, but in full daylight, it gets very bright. Some people cover half of the fiber optic with some tape so that it's not too bright, and they also do this on the real ACOG. In this next photo, I have the real ACOG on top and the replica on the bottom, I've taken this from Trigicon's website and tried to match the position as best as I could. The real ACOG on top has a QR code, as opposed to the one on the bottom, which has the model number. The replica is missing the mount near the eyepiece where the RMR attaches to. With respect to trademarks, the kill flash looks pretty similar to the real ACOG, it just isn't sitting in place as well as it is on the ACOG, so after shooting on a real gun, it probably would pop right off. The honeycomb pattern seems thicker on the real ACOG versus the replica, and the up on the replica ACOG seems a bit farther away than it is on the real one. This is how the green crosshair is supposed to look. When aiming down the ACOG, it looks a little cramped. I find it a lot harder to use this bullet drop compensator because everything's so tight, you can't really use them at range. Everything's so cramped. Here's what the red chevron compensator looks like. On this scope, everything is a lot more spaced out and it's a lot easier to use because you can actually see the tick marks getting smaller as the range gets bigger, and there's enough space to accurately estimate the distance. In this clip, it's difficult to see the writing of the book without the scope. So using the scope, you can see the writing a lot more clearly. In this clip, I'm showing the clarity of the zoom. So without the scope, it's a little hard to see the writing, but with the scope, you can see it clearly. On the green crosshair model, it's a little darker than on the red chevron model, but in terms of clarity, in comparison to the red one, I would probably put it at one step below the red chevron. This model is a lot brighter than the green crosshair model, and in terms of clarity, it's looks, even from the video you can see it's a lot clearer than on the green crosshair model. On the left we have the ACOG without the kill flash, and on the right we have it with the kill flash. As you can see, it's a little darker on the right, but only marginally. In order to adjust windage and elevation, you need a flathead, and also you need to take off the caps to the windage and elevation knobs. On the red chevron model, you can adjust by hand using these knobs. The knobs have a direction to tell you where you can adjust. And also they have a 0, so you can see how far your sight is adjusted to. This is the TA31 with green crosshair with mount. 421.6 grams. This is the TA31 green crosshair with the kill flash. $435.3 grams. This is the TA31 with the red chevron without the mount. $281.4 grams. This is the kill flash separately. 13.6 grams. This is the mount separately. 124.3 grams. This is the TA31 red chevron with mount. 405.7 grams. This is a TA31 red chevron with the kill flash and mount. 419.3 grams. So just to summarize, the green crosshair with mount is 421.6 grams or 14.87 ounces, whereas the red chevron TA31 is 405.7 grams or 14.31 ounces. Just a comparison to the real thing, the real ACOG is 280.7 grams, whereas the replica is 281.4 grams. They're almost exactly the same weight. They're both at 9.9 ounces. To use the BDC on the red chevron model, the tip of the chevron is the point of impact at 100 meters, and the bottom of the chevron is a man's shoulder width at 300 meters. Every tip going down the BDC represents 19 inches, which is the average width of a man's shoulders. So 4 would be 400 meters, 6 would be 600 meters, and the end would be 8 for 800 meters. In order to use the ACOG at close range, you keep both eyes open, focus on the target, bring up your sight to the target, and when you see the color line up with the target, that's when you fire. The binned-in aiming concept allows for peripheral vision while using the sight by keeping both eyes open. When you have both eyes open, you still have view of the target and its surroundings, and once you want to engage, when you slow the weapon onto the target, it will zoom in. TMMWS binned-in aiming concept. In this clip, I was trying the binned-in aiming concept as it was described in the owner's manual. But every time I shot, at the middle of the target, it would go very low. For rapid target acquisition, I would recommend just practicing presenting the rifle on target each time and building muscle memory until you get it at the same spot each time, rather than using the binned-in aiming concept, as it was not reliable for me. I missed every shot using the binned-in aiming concept and was only able to hit the target when presenting the rifle as practice and not looking down the sight. To conclude the video, I would say that the replica ACOGs do a very good job of simulating the real feel of what an ACOG is supposed to look like, but at a tenth of the price, so it gives you that same experience.